For those who don't know or choose to not have social media such as Facebook, understandably, during the lockdown of 2020, ye old-fashioned memes came back where someone had to pick a favorite thing and tag someone else. Like we did, back in my day. I loved those memes. One of them was picking your top 10 video games, one per day, tagging someone each day. I did 20 for shits and giggles. Unintentionally, quite a few have made it into my streams already. Final Fantasy X, the Mass Effect series, the Portal series, Life is Strange, Deadly Premonition, and now another of the actual top 10. Oh, Ace Attorney, how I love thee. Time for some history, both informative and personal. The first entry, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, also known as Gyakuten Saiban in Japan, was a visual novel released on October 12, 2001 for the Game Boy Advance. The developer behind the series, Shu Takumi, originally planned this as a Game Boy Color game about a private investigator. Takumi-san wanted this to be so simple that his own mother could play it. Things changed along the way, obviously, but the first game was made with a team of 7 over the span of 10 months. And the premise is relatively simple. You control Phoenix Wright, a defense attorney, in his wacky court cases in Los Angeles, Japanifornia. You heard me, not California, Japanifornia. Japanifornia started as a running joke because localization in the Audis wasn't as Japan-friendly as it is today, but the increasingly Japanese influence grew harder to ignore. Capcom made it official, or at least semi-official, some years ago by stating that while the localization does take place in the US, it's an alternate US with major Japanese influence. And if you think Phoenix Wright is a corny name, try his Japanese one, Naruhodo Ryuichi, whose last name translates to I see. This entire series is full of pun names. It's absolutely fantastic. Well, one game begot another, and we had a trilogy. The series took off and became a huge influence for the field of visual novels in general. It's not just me saying that, it's well known in Japan for having been a huge influence on the visual novel genre, making them more interactive than, say, the Higurashi series, which is an excellent series, but besides the last entry in it, it's essentially just that, a novel. The plot lines in Ace Attorney are crazy, but also make complete sense when you learn how the world of Ace Attorney works. The characters are a complete mwah. This is some of the best character writing I've seen in any series, and the only other company I regularly praise for that is BioWare. This blows BioWare's characterization out of the water as much as Mass Effect consumes my life. In my opinion, Ace Attorney just does it better. When developing the fourth entry in the main series, Apollo Justice, Takumi-san and the now grown team wanted to kick it up a notch and introduce it on the new Nintendo DS. Not only that, but Ace Attorney was getting translated into other languages. So they added a 5th case to the first game, utilizing some of the technology and characters you would see down the line in Apollo Justice. Besides the random technology jump and mechanics, it fits in seamlessly with the first game, and I honestly had no idea that the 5th case wasn't supposed to be there until I started learning more about the series behind the scenes. So, that 5th case was made for the first Ace Attorney, and the original trilogy was ported from the Game Boy Advance to the Nintendo DS and released worldwide. In the States, copies were really hard to find for a long time. I remember scouring for them as I was introduced to the third entry, Trials and Tribulations, when it was released in the United States in 2007. I was hooked and played whatever I could get my hands on. So when the first 4 games were released, I played the series wildly out of order. 3, 1, 4, then 2. Eventually I played it in the correct order, and then again, and again, and again, and again, and... Anyway, the 4th entry, Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, was released in 2008 in the United States, utilizing the second screen of the DS. Subsequently, a duology about Phoenix's rival, Miles Edgeworth, was released, Ace Attorney Investigations. Only the first one was officially localized, but a team of hardworking fans made a fan localization that feels more like an official Ace Attorney game than a straight translation. And Capcom didn't really make a big stink about it. Usually they're as fast as Nintendo to pull fan projects down, but from what I could follow, there wasn't much kickback. I could be completely wrong on that. Anyone on the Fanslation team can absolutely DM or comment to correct me on that. Unfortunately, the reason that the second Investigations game wasn't translated is because Apollo Justice and Ace Attorney Investigations weren't really received well for differing reasons for each version, which is sad because they're both phenomenal games. But cartridges are time and money that Capcom was now afraid to risk after 2 games in a row weren't as well received as the original trilogy. So in 2013, the 5th entry in the main series, Dual Destinies, was released for the 3DS, digital only. In 2016, entry number 6, Spirit of Justice, was also released digitally for the 3DS. We have yet to have an entry 7 in the official timeline. But this does not mean the team has been idle. In 2015 and 2017 in Japan, a prequel duology starring Phoenix's ancestor, Naruhodo Ryunosuke, called Daigyakuten Saiban, was released. It takes place in Victorian steampunk England and stars Sherlock Sholmes. No, not Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Sholmes. You heard me. The Arthur Conan Doyle estate is going lawsuit happy right now, and Capcom made a wise localization move. More on that when we eventually get there. So, you may have heard of Ace Attorney in more recent years, and not just because of the ports to the Wii, the iOS, or Android, or the HD remakes that came out on the 3DS, and again for the original trilogy on Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC, all of which were digital unless you imported them. Why is that? Well, despite having a frankly incredible live-action adaptation of the first game in 2012, what really made the series gain traction was the anime that aired from 2016 to 2019. It covers the first 3 games, Ace Attorney, Justice for All, and Trials and Tribulations, in the span of 2 seasons. It does so pretty nicely and works as an excellent summary of the series. Some diehard fans were really upset with how much fat was trimmed, but it's honestly a great adaptation, and I really hope that they continue with it. And anime is farther reaching nowadays, so when people noticed that this was an actual video game series, it got far more popular. So popular, in fact, that when Capcom announced that Daigyakuten Saiban was getting a release in the United States as The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, they also announced the first physical cartridge release since 2008 for the Nintendo Switch. Old habits die hard, so I'll usually refer to Great Ace Attorney as Dai or Daigyakuten, but that was released on Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC in 2021. In fact, the entire series celebrated its 20th anniversary in October of 2021, releasing the Naruhodo collection for the Switch and PS4 that included physical copies of both Ryunosuke's duology and Phoenix's first 3 games in HD, in Japanese only, of course. Yes, I am using this to flex my Ace Attorney collection. I'm kind of obsessed. No, I will not tell you where I got that wonderful reproduction cart of the fan-translated Investigations too. If you're looking at the premise of this, or you do at any point during these playthroughs and go, this kind of reminds me of Danganronpa, that's pretty normal. Danganronpa was very heavily inspired by this series, except, nope, Ace Attorney still does it better. Danganronpa is more popular in the States, but I will die on the hill that Ace Attorney is just a better series. That's not to say Japan gets everything. The US has gotten some supplemental material, some hard-to-find manga, art books, and even a crossover with the Professor Layton series. But Japan has an immense love for this series and a Capcom cafe, so they have far more media than we do. Sadly, you can't even find the live-action movie available for Region 1 DVD or Blu-ray. The only way to own it is through Amazon Video. They have keychains, buttons, pins, official jewelry, cartridge releases of the HD versions of games like Apollo Justice, stage plays reenacting cases from the games, and new original cases as stage plays. Ace Attorney is huge in Japan. Have I mentioned the crazy swag? Because they have crazy swag. And I'd love to have access to all of that for less than $100 for an official Capcom Cafe keychain or acrylic stand. Regardless of merchandise, this is a series with a bunch of history for both video games and for myself. I briefly mentioned that I first encountered the third game, Trials and Tribulations, in 2007. I was a sophomore in high school, and as I previously mentioned, I played any version I could get my hands on, hence playing the series wildly out of order. I love this series to pieces and find it only appropriate to share it with the world. I know a lot of Let's Players are doing it lately due to its newfound popularity, but I don't particularly care. If the HD version for Ace Attorney 4, 5, and 6 hasn't been announced or released at any point by the time we get to it, I have another way to officially and legally play it. We are going through this whole series, one game at a time, taking breaks in between each one to give our voices a rest because we're going to inevitably thrash them. Here is one of my greatest gaming loves, so I hand it back over to Streaming Danny and wish her and her mod Katie to have the most fun with a series that they love so very much.